What just happened in the Strait of Hormuz isn't just breaking news.
Strait of Hormuz.
The Hormuz Strait.
Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz.
Well, it may have been the Strait of Hormuz.
To the Strait of Hormuz.
Strait of Hormuz.
Iran is effectively blocking one of the most important shipping routes in the world, the Strait of Hormuz.
It is the single most dangerous escalation in global maritime warfare since the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this time, there are no back channels, no quiet diplomacy, no off-ramps. The United States has done what no country has attempted in the 21st century. It has placed a full military blockade on an entire nation's coastline. And Iran's response? Tehran has threatened to shut down not one, not two, but 3 entire seas. Let that sink in for a moment. On April 13th, 2026, at exactly 10 a.m. Eastern Time, the United States Central Command flipped the switch. The naval blockade of Iran, encompassing the entirety of the Iranian coastline, went into effect. Every ship entering or departing Iranian ports and coastal areas became subject to interception, diversion, and capture. No exceptions, no negotiations, no warnings beyond the one Trump had already issued. Any Iranian who fires at us or at peaceful vessels will be blown to hell. And now, less than 36 hours later, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper has confirmed what the entire world feared. The blockade has been fully implemented. In his own words, U.S. forces have completely halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. 90% of Iran's economy runs on maritime trade. That trade has now stopped. In the first 24 hours alone, not a single vessel made it past the American Wall of Steel. 6 merchant ships attempting to reach Iranian ports were turned back. More than 10,000 U.S. sailors, Marines, and airmen, over a dozen warships, and dozens of aircraft are executing this mission around the clock. The Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is enforcing an impenetrable air umbrella over the strait. F-35s and F/A-18s are flying continuous combat air patrols. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers are positioned at the choke points. And beneath the surface, autonomous knife-fish underwater drones are sweeping the seabed for the mines that Iran scattered across the strait and then lost track of. But here's where this gets truly terrifying, because Iran is not taking this lying down. And what Tehran just threatened could drag the entire Middle East and the global economy into an abyss. General Ali Abdullahi, one of Iran's most senior military commanders, issued a statement that should have sent shockwaves through every capital in the world. He warned that if the U.S. blockade continues, Iran will not allow any exports or imports to continue in the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, or the Red Sea. 3 bodies of water, 3 of the most critical maritime corridors on the planet, shut down simultaneously. The spokesperson for Iran's Khatam al-Anbiya Central Command Headquarters made it even more explicit. If the security of the Islamic Republic of Iran's ports is threatened, no port in the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Sea will be safe. No port. Not Saudi ports, not Emirati ports, not Kuwaiti or Qatari or Bahraini ports. All of them. Every tanker terminal, every container facility, every oil export hub in the entire Gulf region could become a target. And Iran has the tools to make good on that threat, because while the US and Israel have obliterated Iran's conventional navy, Trump himself boasted that 158 Iranian naval vessels are now sitting at the bottom of the sea. There is one force that remains almost entirely intact, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. The Wall Street Journal reported that more than 60% of the IRGC's fast attack craft and speedboat fleet remains operational. We're talking about over 800 small, fast, heavily armed vessels, Boghammer speedboats, Zulfiqar assault craft, Ashura-class attack boats, capable of reaching 50 knots and equipped with rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, and anti-ship missiles. These aren't the kind of targets you sink with a tomahawk. They're small, fast, cheap, and there are hundreds of them. And they've been training for exactly this scenario for decades. Iran's asymmetric naval doctrine is built on one concept: swarm. Overwhelm the enemy's defenses with hundreds of cheap targets simultaneously, so that billion-dollar destroyers run out of interceptors before Iran runs out of boats. In the 21-mile-wide narrows of the Strait of Hormuz, the distance between an American destroyer and an Iranian speedboat isn't measured in kilometers, it's measured in seconds. A bog hammer at 50 knots covers a mile in about 70 seconds. The time between radar detection and physical impact can be shorter than the time it takes a weapons officer to authorize engagement. And if the IRGC launches hundreds simultaneously from hidden coastal inlets, from behind commercial traffic, from positions camouflaged against the rugged Iranian shoreline, the sheer volume of targets could saturate even an Aegis combat system that was designed to track hundreds of contacts in open water, not in a cluttered 21-mile channel full of fishing boats, tankers, and debris. And then there are the drones. Iran reportedly has over 300 long-range kamikaze drones, Shahed 136 variants, and Mahajer types that can be launched from Iran's coastline and reach any point in the strait within minutes. Combined with shore-based anti-ship cruise missiles like the Noor and the supersonic Khalij Fars ballistic anti-ship missile, the IRGC's coastal defense network turns the narrows of Hormuz into a kill zone, where every American ship operates within range of multiple simultaneous threat vectors. If even one of those speedboats gets through, if even one explosive-laden drone boat reaches an Arleigh Burke, the consequences are catastrophic. Not just for the ship, for the entire global oil market. But the surface threat is only half the picture. What's lurking beneath those dark, shallow waters is arguably even more dangerous. Iran planted hundreds of naval mines in the Strait of Hormuz at the start of the war. Moored contact mines, magnetic triggered mines, acoustic mines. They were dropped from small boats quickly and irregularly by IRGC naval units operating at night. And here's the part that nobody talks about enough. Iran has lost control of its own mines. The Gulf's powerful bottom currents have dragged many of these explosives miles from their original positions. Their exact locations are now unknown to everyone, including Iran. The strait has become a deadly lottery where any vessel crossing any point risks triggering an explosion that was never meant to be there. The US Navy's mine-clearing operation is already underway. The USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. and the USS Michael Murphy, two Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, crossed through the strait on April 11th as the opening move. Knifefish autonomous underwater vehicles are being deployed to systematically scan and neutralize the seabed. But even the most optimistic estimates suggest it could take months to fully clear the strait. Months. And every single day those mines remain, the risk of a catastrophic accident, a supertanker detonation, a warship crippled, an environmental disaster hangs over the world's most important waterway like a guillotine blade. Now zoom out, because what's happening in Hormuz is sending shockwaves across the entire global economy. Brent crude has surged nearly 40% since the war began and is now approaching $100 a barrel. Insurance premiums for vessels transiting the Gulf have multiplied. Ship owners are paying mine risk premiums that make normal commerce impossible. Most tankers are simply refusing to enter the strait at all. And it's not just oil. Natural gas, petrochemicals, fertilizer, and plastic raw materials all pass through this corridor. When Hormuz is blocked, it's not just the price of petrol that goes up. Food prices spike because fertilizer supply chains break. Electronics costs rise because petrochemical feedstocks are disrupted. Construction materials get more expensive. Agriculture suffers. The entire global supply chain is feeling the tremor. And the alternative routes? They're no salvation. The Cape of Good Hope adds 10 extra days of travel and doubles fuel costs. The Suez Canal is already at capacity and faces its own security problems. There is no quick substitute for the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's oil passes through this 21-mile-wide corridor, and right now, that corridor is a minefield on one side and a military blockade on the other. But here's the twist that makes this crisis even more complex. The US blockade isn't just targeting Iran. It's targeting everyone who's been doing business with Iran. Trump was explicit. Any vessel that has paid a toll to Iran will be intercepted on the high seas. Since March, Iran's parliament passed legislation creating a toll system in the strait. Ships were being charged over $1 million each for passage, with payments accepted in Chinese yuan and untraceable cryptocurrencies. And the biggest customer paying those tolls? China. Beijing buys nearly 20% of its daily oil imports, roughly 1.8 million barrels, directly from Iran. This trade bypasses US sanctions, avoids the US dollar, and flows through shadow networks that Washington has been trying to shut down for years. The blockade is designed to kill that pipeline, and China is furious. The Chinese Foreign Ministry called the blockade an action that would exacerbate tensions and undermine the fragile ceasefire. Behind the scenes, the question that military strategists are obsessing over is this: what happens when a Chinese-flagged tanker approaches the blockade zone? Does the US Navy stop it? If it does, Beijing could call that a violation of sovereignty. If it doesn't, the blockade collapses, and every other nation knows the American wall has a Chinese-shaped hole in it. This is the most dangerous game of chicken in maritime history, and it's happening right now, in real time, in a strait that is 21 miles wide and full of mines that nobody can find. Iran's position is paradoxical and increasingly desperate. Tehran's leaders call the blockade piracy. Parliamentary spokesperson Ibrahim Rezai called it a bluff and warned that Iran may reveal other cards it has not yet used. But Iran is being strangled by its own strategy. Before the war, Iran exported roughly 1.84 million barrels of crude oil per day through the strait. That trade generated billions in revenue. The toll system added hundreds of millions more. All of that is now frozen. Iran weaponized Hormuz to pressure the world, and the US responded by weaponizing it right back, except the American version comes with carrier strike groups and autonomous mine-clearing drones. And this is where the darkest irony of Iran's strategy reveals itself. The mines that Iran planted to threaten the world are now threatening Iran itself. Tehran's own oil exports must pass through the same strait. The currents that scattered the mines don't distinguish between enemy tankers and Iranian ones. The weapon Iran deployed to hold the world hostage is now holding Iran hostage. The regime mined its own economic lifeline, and the US just padlocked the exit. Russia, meanwhile, is watching all of this with something approaching satisfaction. Oil prices above $100 per barrel are a windfall for Moscow. The Western price cap on Russian crude is becoming unenforceable as energy-starved markets bend sanctions to keep their industries running. Every dollar added to the price of Brent crude flows directly into the Kremlin's war chest, funding the same military-industrial complex that is producing T-90Ms and Shahed-type drones at wartime tempo. Iran's strategy of chaos in the Gulf is inadvertently writing Russia a blank check. But Russia's gain extends beyond oil revenue. Washington has now committed over 50,000 troops, a carrier strike group, 11 destroyers, an amphibious group, and dozens of aircraft to the Middle East. Every asset stationed in the Gulf is an asset that is not in the Pacific, deterring China, and not in Europe, deterring Russia. Moscow and Beijing are watching, taking notes, measuring exactly how far American military capacity can be stretched simultaneously across 3 theaters. For Russia, the Hormuz crisis is a strategic gift that keeps giving. So where does this go from here? The scenarios are terrifying in every direction. If the blockade holds and Iran's economy collapses under the weight of zero maritime trade, the regime faces a choice between negotiating on American terms, surrendering its nuclear program, accepting inspections, potentially accepting regime constraints, or escalating with the only tools it has left: IRGC speedboats, shore-based anti-ship missiles, suicide drones, and the threat to make good on its promise to shut down 3 seas. If Iran escalates, the US air campaign will resume with devastating force. B-52 Stratofortresses and B-1B Lancers are already positioned within range. Bunker buster munitions are ready to destroy the underground missile batteries hidden in Iran's mountainous coastline. F-35s maintain absolute air superiority. The moment Iran fires an anti-ship missile at an American destroyer, it triggers a response that will level every launch site, radar installation, and command center within range. Iran's generals know this, which is why, so far, Tehran's response has been limited to words rather than weapons. But words can become actions, and in a 21-mile-wide strait packed with mines, patrolled by speedboats, and overshadowed by the largest concentration of American naval firepower since the Gulf War, the margin for miscalculation is measured in seconds, not days. The ceasefire that Pakistan brokered just 1 week ago, the 2-week pause that was supposed to create space for negotiations, is hanging by a thread. The Islamabad talks collapsed. Iran's nuclear program was the breaking point. And now, instead of diplomacy, the strait is full of warships, the skies are full of fighter jets, and Iran's entire coastline is under military siege. Admiral Cooper's statement today was chillingly simple. The blockade has been fully implemented. US forces maintain maritime superiority in the Middle East. An estimated 90% of Iran's economy is fueled by international trade by sea. That trade has been completely halted. The question that hangs over all of this, the question that no one in Washington, Tehran, Beijing, or Moscow can answer with certainty, is what happens next? Does Iran bow to pressure and negotiate? Does it escalate and trigger the very inferno it has been threatening? Does China test the blockade with a flagged tanker and force a confrontation that could redraw the global order? Or does the world simply hold its breath day after day while 10,000 American sailors enforce a blockade on a minefield that nobody fully controls? One thing is certain. The Strait of Hormuz, 21 miles wide, 34 kilometers of shallow water between Iran and Oman, has become the most dangerous place on Earth. The lock that Iran put on it has been ripped off, and in its place, America has installed its own. The question is no longer who controls the strait, it's whether anyone can control what happens next. The clock is ticking, the mines are drifting, the speedboats are circling, and somewhere in the dark waters of the Gulf, an autonomous American drone is scanning the seabed for explosives that even the people who planted them can no longer find. This is far from over, and if you want to stay on top of every move in this crisis as it unfolds, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, because the next chapter of this story could break at any moment, and when it does, you'll want to know what it means. We'll see you in the next one.